morning, everybody. It is so good to have you here with me. Imagine
if you have your vision as the car with the right team.
Imagine how quick that vision will come into the pit step. Something that was taking 5 years takes 3 months. This morning is all about the leadership and influence. Good morning. It's that time of the morning. This is the Inside Show with Carl Hendricks. As you know, and we this morning have a wonderful discussion around church and reopening of churches. This issue is more than 18 months old. You know, when we started out, when we went into full lockdown, and then we had 50 people, and then we had 100 people, then we go back to 50, and then we go back to 100, and then we go back to 50, and then they close the churches entirely, and then back to 50, 100, and now we are on 250 people. Well, that's a situation that we find ourselves in. And this morning, I'm surrounded by the pastors of Crystal Church here this morning. I've got Pastor Lester Constance. I've got Pastor Roden Bora. I've got Pastor Xavier Hendricks. Unfortunately, Pastor Neil could not make it because Pastor Neil got a dentist appointment. And we're gonna also let Pastor Lester leave soon here because Lester is going to an optometrist. It's like the guys are falling apart here, you know. I don't know what's happening with this with my leaders. I think it's the COVID effect. Yes, somehow I don't know what's wrong with Pastor Bora. We'll soon find out if there's something wrong in him and Pastor Xavier here with us in the studio. Well, this as I mentioned. Please, if you don't mind, I would love you please to subscribe, and I would love you please to hit that bell, because every single time that when we're on, you will know that we are online. So let's get into the program immediately this morning. And I know if you know of your pastor or a leader in your church or any form of leadership, it doesn't matter what it is, if it's in a fivefold ministry, if it's a volunteer or anyone like that, or if you struggle to reopen church. We're going to talk a little about how difficult it is to reopen church, and I know with this political arena for where we are right now, it's not that the fourth wave is not waiting for us, because the fourth wave is waiting for the election. These waves are very intelligent. You just wait for the elections to pass and everything, and then the fourth wave will come. I don't know how these things work, but the devil knows how it works as well, because he is the author of all these things. And sometimes people are just puppets to darkness, and that's what it is. But I tell you one thing, what I notice about leaders, what I notice about the Christian family and the believers, is that some of them are in such a bad stage. It's just hard to recover and to bring them back. There's different things that we're going to discuss on the program. We're also going to give you some way outs if you feel burned out, what to do when you burned out as a leader. And you most probably, you're not really guilty, but you don't really know what's happening with you and your lack of interest towards God's work, the church, your prayer life, reading the Bible, your family life, and so many other beautiful things. Let's literally line up for you here this morning. So this morning we're going to discuss about 5 things the enemy, not God, is winning in your life and in leadership. So we're going to do different things here. We're going to push up and down, back and forth, and we're not really going to stick just to one thing, because that's why I'm surrounded by such wonderful, wise pastors here this morning, just to give us insight around the situation and for where we are and what's the condition. But I just want to give you the 5 things, and then at some point we'll dig into it. And then the first one, you being divisive, tending to the cause, meaning it causes division, some way, one or the other. And the pastors will mention it more than once here on the set here. The division amongst the Christians was so huge on the multimedia platforms. They differ around little tiny things that was really not important. They debate around it, but they cause such a lot of discord in so many ways in the kingdom of God. Let me give you a typical example. Must you vaccine, must you not vaccine? That causes strife in the kingdom of God. Let me give you another example, the phygital church. Some want to watch from home, others want to be in church physically. So the discord around that. And then the fights, the inner fights. For instance, if somebody attend church, There's debates after church with around the lunch. Why are you going to church? You're bringing COVID back home. The debate just went on and on and on. There's a divisiveness around there. The second one is you growing arrogant, meaning the arrogance creep in easily among church leaders. There are two primary reasons for that. One of it is when you're successful. Because you don't think you need God. You're successful in many other ways and you don't feel like you need God. You still have your job. You don't need God. Things are working for you. You're living in a good house. You don't need God. There's fuel in your car. You don't need God. And your level of success is so good that you don't think that you need God in your life. The other one around you growing arrogant is that false definition of maturity. Because you think when you know, you mature. Because in the 21st century church, knowledge is so easily available. People can just Google a sermon and preach a sermon. People can people think they have knowledge. You preach and they Google. So people think that when they have knowledge, there's maturity. So I'm just showing you stuff that's really giving us problems for reopening churches and for leaders to man up. The third point is you're starting to blur moral lines. So you're so long away from God and church and prayer and the ambience of being in the presence of God just to rub off in praise or in worship or in receiving the word, or just having your fellow brother or sister on left or right giving an elbow or high five, looking in the person's eye. So the moral line starts to blur in one way or the other. You don't see that as a sin anymore, and you start leaning more over to that side. And slowly but surely the devil starts biting into your spiritual life, and before you know it, you gone. Then the fourth one, you just simply discouraged by a lot of things. It could be the political arena, it could be your marriage, it could be your children, it could be your finances, it could be the job situation, but you just discouraged. And the fifth one is you full of self-pity. Now, self-pity, you might just say, but what do you mean by that? But it is so easy that when you demoralize and when you're in a bad spot, you feel sorry for yourself in many ways. Sorry in the sense that there's a saying that goes like, self-pity chisels a stone, what discouragement whisper. So when you discourage, that is just by the tip of the iceberg. But really, self-pity will chisel in stone. You will know that you are in absolute self-pity in one way or the other. Well, let me get into the program, and later on we'll give you some solutions how to get out of all these things and how leaders most probably will come back. But I would love to start with Pastor Lester Constance. He's also our music minister at Crystal Church, and I would love him through his lenses just to add value with this morning about how hard it is, what's his view around reopening churches. Is it easy? Is it hard? Is it difficult? And what is the situation around that? So let's hear from Pastor Lester.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you, Dr. Carl, for this opportunity to share this beautiful platform with you. The reopening of churches, there are some churches that, the government gave different criteria in terms of amounts. So sometimes we were at 50, sometimes we were at 100, sometimes we were at 200 and so forth, and it goes back and forth and so forth. And I see one of the key things was when the government gave directives in terms of how many people can come to church. There are some churches that opened with that amount of people and continually working. So that means they'll have 2, 3, 4 services on a Sunday, just trying to get people coming through and rotating the congregation. And then you had churches that closed for the entire 18 months. And they have opened now recently. I think last week some of the churches have opened, especially your churches that contains a lot of people, like your 3,000 seaters and 2,000 seaters and so forth. So they decided to open like after 18 months. I must just say the reality of the situation is you're going to struggle when you open the church. That's just bottom line, because the people are not coming back and they're not going to attend church like they used to. That's the reality. It's truth. There's not some magic wand going to be waved and everybody's going to come back at the same time. So we have to face that reality. We have to face that truth. even with churches, I think the momentum of churches opening with 50 and 100 and keeping that momentum going is much easier to get people coming, because we've been keeping church. You must know, the congregation haven't come to church, and you have also grown weary in having church. So some of the pastors have closed down. They even forgot how to keep church. You know what I'm saying? It's a reality. You don't know how to. It's like starting over. But that's the reality that one has to face with the times that we are living in. And it could be negative, it could be positive, but this is the reality. And Doc, if we can just go to that first point that you highlighted there, I think we keep it in that divisive, tending to cause disagreement and hostility. Like you said in the beginning, there were people for opening church and people against opening church. You know what I'm saying? And that was not even a discussion of the believers versus the non-believers. It was the believers versus the believers. And so that was the divisive work of the enemy. Yes, it's a pandemic, and yes, we understand all these things. The bottom line is there was disagreement within the body. You know what I'm saying? And so we're going to have to navigate through that whole thing and see how we can get the people back to church.
And that disagreement caused a lot of discord within leadership.
Yes, sir.
Because leaders have followers.
Correct.
So in our organization, we have levels for level 5, 4, 3, 2, and so on.
Yeah.
So if your leader is negative towards reopening,
yes,
or the congregations don't see leaders acting in a specific way,
correct,
it demoralizes them in one way or the other.
True. Thank you so much once again. Good morning, everyone. Doc, it's always nice to be on the shows. I just love being able to chat, and this is a very relevant topic. Just on that one point, in terms of one thing that, and I think many moons ago, Doc ministered and preached a series about habits. I mean, we have been in, it is 19 months now, that people had the opportunity to learn and develop a new habit of not going to church. They have utilized their time of going to church to do other things. They've developed that habit. Many of us expect them, when we go live, that our congregation members must all be on live at the time when we have service. But if you notice the views, many of them in the afternoon will only view and watch the service. So they've created new habits. And I think that is most probably one of the difficult things that needs to happen now that the people are coming back to church, because they have to get back into a new habit and unlearn habits that they've learned during this COVID time. Just to latch on to what Pastor Lester said, I believe that the playing fields have been leveled. It doesn't matter if you're now a small church or a big church. All of us are facing exactly the same dilemma in terms of opening, and the struggle is real. If you weren't proactive many months ago in terms of making contact with your congregation members, being proactive to develop your leaders during this pandemic, right? Then you're stuck now, like Pastor Lester said, they are in a position where they have to really start from fresh. And I mean, some churches, there's an excitement with people coming back to church. But there's also a disappointment with some of the people, because the expectation that the pastor has is that I'm excited, I'm going to open church now, all the people are going to come running back. And then on Sunday, when they opened up their doors and they realized that only a handful of people arrived, that's when the reality sunk in. Because now, what do you do now?
Just around the divisiveness, or being a device in one way or the other. There's a saying that goes that it is not, it is like, let me get it to, strangely say, in our culture, some Christians wear their divisiveness as a badge of honor. It's not actually a badge of evil. Now, I think what the author of this part, Carrie Nieuwhof, it's a nice guy just to research. He's really, really somebody that's current and fresh within leadership. Some people think it's a kind of honor or a badge to be decisive, to differ. People think it's something good to differ. So they just go automatically the opposite side. Even if it's good or bad, they just decide that that's how it's going to be. And some people, let us just be honest, just before the lockdown, as leaders, they were problematic. It's like it was just a build-up towards something. And now COVID just gave them the opportunity. Let us be honest, some congregational members were in a slow, and a backslidden stage already before lockdown. So the lockdown just caused them just to walk their way and be negative and cause lots and lots of division on all multimedia platforms. If it's on Facebook or it doesn't matter where it was, but there was huge fights. I think there's less now, but there was huge fights. Your contribution, Xavier?
Yeah, so I want to jump on to basically what both Pastor Lester and Pastor Roland was saying there. I actually pulled the stats here, and according to Google, it says between 18 and 254 days it takes for a human being to fall into a new habit. And it's been longer than that. And they say the average is 66 days for a new habit to become automatic. So which means that if you've been doing something for extended period of time like that, you start doing it automatically after a while. And so what begins to happen is that we continue to have, like for example, rehearsals with the teams, or the different teams that is part of the church. We continue to have meetings with the different teams, even throughout the period where we weren't able to have church. We continue to have that personal touch with people, even throughout that period. And what that does is, because remember, church is multifaceted. You cannot run it, the pastor alone. So a lot of times, I think a lot of pastors fell into this misconception that, no, it's fine, I'll go onto a live stream and I'll be there with even a green screen. You can even make the live stream look fancy and have fancy equipment and everything, and it can be a high quality live stream. But what you don't understand is that the whole entire congregation or the whole operation runs with different facets. There's music teams, there's host and hostessing teams, there's teams in the foyers, there's teams at your hubs, these different teams that make this thing work, and collectively it's what brings the whole product together. So if you were going for 2 years, just you and your camera, you could fool yourself by thinking that you're going to have that same momentum when you get back. And the reality of the matter is you're not going to have that same momentum when you get back. And you can even fool yourself, like you said earlier, that to think that people are going to watch. And then you find you go live and you get 20 views, 30 views, 40 views. And you think, oh, but my congregation is 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. Why am I getting 100 views or 50 views? And the reality of the matter is if you weren't keeping that momentum throughout this period, you are going to be in for a surprise to come back and find your teams have fallen apart. Some people have backslidden. We were in a situation where we were doing funerals during lockdown period. And there was a situation where we were going to have one of the memorial services at a different location. And when they were looking for the musicians, some of the guys are backslidden. When they were looking for the singers, they couldn't get in touch with the people anymore. And that's the reality of the matter. If you weren't keeping the momentum, the chances that you're going to come back and find what you left 2 years ago might not be there.
I think, there's a point that one of the points talks about the arrogance aspect.
Yeah, that's the second point. That's exactly where I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
You're growing arrogant. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You see, because even pastors, right, are arrogant in the fact that they think they know what is going on, right? What I've realized that there's a blessing in the presence of God. There's a blessing in the sanctuary. When people come together, there's a presence of God, there's a blessing of God, but it also makes you sensitive to where God is and what God is busy doing. But now the guys are getting arrogant, right? Pastors are getting arrogant because they don't want to be told, right? They don't want, for 19 months from this platform, we've been guiding, giving advice in terms of how to deal with the various aspects. And how to be consistent in terms of making contact with your congregation members. There are people that just ignored what we were trying to project out there. We did a whole series on the post-quarantine church, right? And the elements of the phygital church and all that. But there are people that ignored that, that didn't take notice of it because they feel they are right in where they are, and they were under the impression that at the right time, things were just going to fall into place. But the arrogance aspect is not only with the pastors, but it can be with the congregation. Because like Doc mentioned, some of the congregation members and leaders become arrogant because they don't want decisive directives, decisive direction, right? If a leader doesn't take decisive direction in terms of guiding the congregation, because of where they have been for 19 months, in the seat of, what do you call it? The seat
Comfort,
of comfort,
luxury,
luxury, not being...
Not having to put in that effort, yeah.
Exactly, right? Now, for them to be now called out and said, now you have to come out of that place, right? And now come back to the party. They become arrogant.
Yeah, I just want to give Pastor Les the opportunity because he's going to run in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I just want you to give us as much as possible from your side.
Doc, I think there's been this discussion, debate, whatever you want to call it, that you can do church from the digital platform and in the comfort of your home, and that you're still growing. There's been this discussion, but we all know, if truth be told, you have to gather the saints in this manner, because one has a word of encouragement, one has a word that would speak to your situation. One will sing a hymn, one will do this, and so forth. So you need that contact with one another. There is no way you can grow as an individual alone in the comfort of your home. Spiritually, it doesn't happen. I haven't seen one person being isolated and they growing spiritually. You have to be in contact with believers and people. We are made like that. We are not made as islands. We are made to worship and fellowship with one another. So that debate for me is actually a lame debate. Yes, that's why we spoke about the phygital church. You do need a digital platform, but you also need the physical platform as well, where people physically come to church. And we can see that, be it as it may, you can debate it, you can have your own thoughts about it, but let me tell you, on a Sunday morning, when churches around South Africa gather between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock, there's a spiritual dynamic that happens that you cannot explain in the natural. Because all those people gathering together, praying to one God, believing in one God, and worshiping their God, something happens. And that's exactly what the devil wants. He wants to isolate you. And you feel arrogant in that because, hey, I've still got my job. Hey, I'm still making it. Yes, I'm okay with myself and so forth. My family's fine and so. But there are so many out there that didn't make it because they could not gather with the saints. They draw strength. The majority of people draw strength from being with one another and being in contact with one another. So I think on a sense of arrogance, yes, we could get there. And people will be arrogant in saying, I made it through the pandemic without going to church, so I will keep not going to church. But like we always say, there's 3 types of things when it comes to a storm. There's 3 types of situations. You either come from a storm, or you either in a storm right now, or you either going into a storm. Yeah. So you might be okay right now, but the storm is coming, and it's going to come strong, and you need the support of others.
Just on that one point of how important it is to fellowship.
Yeah.
I've looked more than once into our congregation where you find single parents, like moms and dads. Yes. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they come with their children here. They find somebody here that helps them to parent
100%.
in one way or the other.
100%.
The other thing is there's something about church and children's church that's so important. It helps with the value systems of the child. Mm-hmm. So new culture is now being developed for 18 months.
Yeah.
So a child that was just born and 18 months later is now 1 year and some odd months old, right? Yeah. And somebody that was just about to go into being a teenager was still 11 and a half. Mm-hmm. Hit himself on 30 now. Without church, that bridging was vital for church and that child. Yeah. And then somebody that was 15 is now 17 And I can go down the line. So there's new culture not just being formed, or habits not just being formed by the parents who's really leading this, but there's new culture being formed with their children.
Yes.
And then what you mentioned about the storms is coming.
It's coming.
It's definitely coming. You will be tested in ways that you will not believe. It is proven that when a couple raise their children in the house of God and in the presence of God, they have less problems, or there's support. There's a support system
Yes.
right around that.
Doc, it's mind-boggling for me in the 21st century, and that's where the culture is at. For me to understand, it's very difficult for me to understand how parents would invest so much time in education. Beautiful. Hand clap for you. That's exceptional. And you go out of your way for education and getting them to school and so forth. But the spiritual aspect of it, you neglect. It's not a problem for your children not to attend children's church. I don't understand that, because your spiritual dynamic is what's going to take you into eternity. That's more than the natural. So I don't understand where the priorities are lying in the 21st century, that you find it so important to invest educationally in your children, which is very good, but spiritually you're not investing in them because they're not coming to children's church, and for you it's okay.
It's the
And
moral,
that's mind-boggling
it's
for
the
me.
moral dilemma, which is one of the, I think it's the third point, right?
Yes.
Because culture and circumstances has really conditioned people and households to start thinking and acting a certain way, which means instead of that investing that 8 and 10 o'clock to the spiritual sensitivity of the family, right, in terms of getting the children into kids' belief, and the parents spending time in church, in the house of the Lord, and now they've occupying their time with different things, and people are not realizing and Doc illustrated that there's a ripple effect in terms of where your priorities is. If your priorities is not at the right place, there's a moral dilemma that you are creating within the community and in our society.
I mean, I look at my kids, and I see that they're using vocabulary that I know for a fact I didn't teach them. They're using words and things. Obviously, they're learning at school. They're learning at the children's church. They come into contact with the people in and around the church. And why I say that is because your children don't only learn things from you there in the house. They also get other environments. And so if you're sending your children all the time to secular environments, don't be surprised later when the child comes back and talks about, Mommy, at school today they were talking about, whatever, things of sexual nature, or things of gender nature, or things, and now you're like, where did this child hear this, or where did this child come on this now? It's because that's the environment the child is exposed to. And so if there's nothing to counter that, if there's nothing to say that, hey, hold on, there's a moral standard here that we need to hold and that we need to abide by, and then you're going to be in for a rough ride when the child hits 11, 12, 13, teenage ages and all that kind of thing. And now you want to try and say, hey, how can I fix this? This thing I'm speaking from people I've seen in reality go through these things. Now that they're trying to get back to church, they're trying to, this child doesn't want to come, right? This child. Yeah, but when you look at the history and what the layup towards that, then you realize but you had an issue with the churches, you stopped going to church, you had an issue with the pastor, you had an issue with his car and his house or whatever it is, and now you are confused why this child is not where the child is supposed to be. So that's a challenge. And quick on the thing Pastor Lester mentioned earlier about the atmosphere that's created. I think when you drive to church on a Sunday morning, I think you feel a sense of peace in the entire atmosphere. In South Africa, just driving in the sun, it's quiet on the road. Some people are jogging, some people are riding by, and there's a nice energy. And why I say that is because last night I was watching a documentary about what's going on in Mexico. And there was a lady that they interviewed in Mexico, and she was searching for a son for 3 years. And she knew that the cartel had the son. And she then went with the other mothers, about 10 other mothers, and decided that they're going to go and dig up graves. The graves that they knew where the cartel were burying, like just random dead bodies. They ended up finding over 100 and something dead bodies. And her son was 93 that she dug up and she found. So I'm speaking to my wife about this. I'm like, see, what's going on in this place? Why does it feel like there's a spirit of like death? And they're hanging dead bodies on the, when you drive through, there's so many bodies hanging on the bridges as the cars are driving. And then Anka's mentioned something. She's like, there's an actual spirit. This God that they worship, the God of death, they call it Santa Maria. They worship this thing. And that's the atmosphere in the whole entire Mexico. And so the cartel has literally taken over the atmosphere with the spirit of death in the whole Mexico. And so when you contrast that to having a spirit of life and having a spirit of godliness and having a culture and a country that goes to church and that worships and that prays, you have to have something that's going to counter that. Failure to do so, if we end up looking like those countries later, then you're surprised. Why? But they closed the church. You were with the government when they were closing the church. Now things are happening. Now, we must pray. Why is there accidents on the road? Why is there this heaviness, this cloud of heaviness and darkness over our country, which there was when COVID started. And we were fighting that. For those of us who stood against it in the spiritual realm, you must thank your heaven and thank God that there were still people that were saying, hey, we need to fight this thing.
Yes.
While you were sleeping and you were blind to the tactics of the enemy.
Yeah, and being consistent in that. I'm now talking a little bit about my sermon for tomorrow.
You must just get closer to the mic. It seems like you were not on the show for a long time.
Doc, I think on that spiritual thing that Pastor Xavier mentioned there is very important, because you know what? When you signed yourself up for Christianity, you enlisted in an army.
Come on.
There's not going to be peace. It's a constant fight between a spiritual fight between the powers of darkness, and Christians want to lace into Christianity, and it must be a soft ride. We're in a fight here. We're fighting all the way every day. We're in a fight, and that's what we need to realize, that this is war. Yes. And we have to stand up against principalities and powers and rulers of darkness. That's our job.
Yes. For everybody out there, we are busy talking about how hard it is for churches to reopen. And we're talking about how important it is for us to keep on moving. It is not always easy. Some churches just opened this weekend, and it was one of the hardest things for them to reopen. And we're discussing that now with our pastors here in the studio today. And we are on point 3 around you starting to blur moral lines, which is so true. I just want to quote something of A.C. Lewis. A.C. Lewis is saying, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, which means the enemy will come slowly but surely. It will it take one spoon at a time. He will not come harshly in your face and will show who he is. But it's very gradual, slowly but surely. And that's exactly what he's doing with the believers. He's kind of chipping slowly but surely Christianity off them and allow them to blur the moral lines. So what was wrong before COVID is not wrong anymore. Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Even when you look at the lockdown, people are not even realizing it's going for 2 years now that the country is still under the state of, what's it called? The state of disaster or state of emergency.
No, disaster.
The state of disaster.
Disaster Act,
You can't be 2 years under the state of disaster act and no one's even questioning it. The reason nobody's questioning it is because of exactly that. We started getting used to, it's lockdown, it's this. And what you're not realizing, you're falling into a communist state. And if you don't open up your eyes and realize that we're becoming communistic of nature, if you don't wear a mask, you get locked up. If you drive around after a certain time, you get locked. Those are communist acts. Those are things that communist countries have to face. So later on, if they start restricting you more and more, you start becoming okay with it because you've been desensitized to the nature of having your freedoms taken away slowly but surely and quickly. Not quickly, slowly but surely, and I can't remember the word I'm trying to use, but slowly but surely. Gradually is the word. So you have to stay awake for these things and you have to keep moving in the right direction.
So the blurring is real. And what the conviction of church that was there before is not there anymore. I try from my side to text some of our members that I didn't see for 18 months. And you know what? I will give them 3 lines on a text, and then I will give the last one. I will first ask, how's it going with your family? Then I will ask something else, and then thirdly I'll ask, when am I seeing you back in church? They answer the first 2.
Don't answer the third.
But they don't answer the third one,
Yeah.
or the very important one. So we don't sit back and act as if this is not real. Everybody's struggling.
Yeah.
And for what it is, we are shepherds. We are first shepherds. And if there's something wrong with the sheep, we should get out there and go get them.
Yes.
Because sheep don't know what's right and what's wrong at the end of the day. So can I move on to the 4th point? People are discouraged.
Doc, people are really discouraged. And I just want to, if there can be an end to this debate, I'll be so happy, because it's such a stupid debate for me. We're not getting people back to church because of the money. That's just so stupid. Because people have lost jobs.
True.
People have been retrenched. Companies are in turmoil. You go onto the stats and look at the unemployment rate, right? Even so, you can't gather 50 people and expect now we have to gather 50 people so that we can meet the budget. How are you going to meet the budget with 50 people? It's not about the money. It's about the spiritual aspect of the people. And you cannot get even 250. We seat 4,000 people. You
What
can't
must
have
you
a
do with 250?
what we going to do with 250? If it's about the money, it's not about that. People have taken knocks. People don't tithe anymore because they don't have jobs. And people are struggling. And we're trying to get people to get, so that we can encourage you to say that, don't give up. We're with you in this fight. Companies have lost. Obviously, the church is going to lose.
Yeah. Companies
Companies
have
are
closed
closed.
down.
Closed down.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's going to be less tithing coming into the church and offerings. That's how it works. We're saying we need to get the people back so that this discouragement you don't have to go through alone. We can stand together. We can encourage you. We can pray and ask God. We're to agree on touching anything. So shall it be. It's all about communion. It's all about us being together. And people are in a state of depression, and people are committing suicide. We just done a funeral the other day where
Yes.
Pastor Xavier preached. A young boy of 28 years old, doing very well in his company, exceptionally well. But he's feeling alone. He's discouraged. We don't know what the situation is, but that's why people need church.
The enemy is not the church.
No.
No.
The enemy is even not even COVID.
Yes.
Because COVID is just like a disease, like any other disease.
Correct.
It's the lockdown.
Yes.
It's how our country is dealing with it. Go
Yes.
to the truth. Go
Yes.
to the facts.
Yes.
And now we're buying it as truth.
Yes.
And people are demoralized and discouraged. I cannot tell you enough. It's a pity we don't have Pastor Neil here, our family pastor, in the studio with us here today. But I cannot tell you more than enough how many people have marital problems
Yes, sir.
out there. So when we open church, we don't pass the people the tithe. We pass the people. That's it.
That's it.
So we're not going to stand here and have a tick box here. We're not even doing what streamline churches are doing to see how's your offering over the years, if we could bury you or not.
Not even at your attendance before we bury you.
Not even attendance.
Yeah.
We
That's
bury.
what
How many funerals we
How-
did now that people
exactly.
that don't even belong to our
Belong
church?
to our church. True.
So the truth here
To a
is
church.
the people are discouraged.
Yeah.
And the enemy is using that as a weapon
Yeah.
to push them further down into demoralization. And this battle is not against flesh and blood, the text is saying.
Yes.
It's against evil forces and against principalities
Yes.
and demons in high places, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
And what is our function is to pull it down.
Yes.
We should bring it
That's
down.
our
Yes.
purpose.
It's our purpose. So if you take, now this is really interesting. Just before the election, we go to 250. And remember, we were supposed to go into October into the fourth wave.
A wave, yeah.
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 That's what they
Yeah.
well, that's
But the
what they
wave is now
predicted.
postponed.
To
Yeah, they
November.
postponed the wave because of elections. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the truth is this: people are so gullible. They
true,
believe the
People-
words
people
of the enemy so easily. That's it.
In Doc's book on stress, fear, and anxiety, You mentioned that one of the triggers is isolation. And this is, I
Yes.
mean, here you put an entire nation in isolation, which is one of the triggers for depression.
And within this, why we need to have church and open church. If you look at the murders, if you look at the most domestic violence, if you look at teenage pregnancy, if you look at the levels of marriages, that's all church stuff.
Yeah.
That's our stuff.
That's our stuff.
It's moral stuff. And that's where we specialize in, and that's what we do. You guys want to add anything on discouragement before I move on to the last one?
No, we good.
You're good there. The last one is you're full of self-pity. So if discouragement is left you unchecked, it grows. So self-pity is discouragement in steroids. Completely on steroids. So self-pity chisels in stone what discouragement whispers. So the devil will first get you to discouragement. And when you're in discouragement, you fall into self-pity. All of a sudden, you start seeing stuff that doesn't really exist. But it's about you and your self-pity and for where you are in your personal life. Now, before you go, let's just get
I think self-pity is where it's a state where you feel there's no way out now. And the devil gets you to that. And it's difficult to come out of that isolated. And that for me is so important. That when you're in a state of self-pity, you need a reminder from somebody to tell you, get up out of that situation. We're all facing this. There's people that's worse off than you. You need to get up. You've got something to live for. You've got children to live for. You've got a spouse to live for. You've got family to live for. You've got friends. You know what I'm saying? And so that for me is a state where you need encouragement.
And what self-pity does, Pastor Lester, it pushes you to the sidelines.
Yes.
Because when you're in a state of self-pity, you don't want to mingle. You don't want to mix. You go to the sideline. You go into a depression.
Yes.
And you know what? There's so many people that's really depressed. And that's my next section that we're really getting to, 12 keys to getting back from burnout or depression.
Yeah.
So when the devil places you in a place of self-pity, he marginalizes you, which means he worked you better. So he comes through your physical side of you, which means you breaking down bodily. And then he gets to your mental side.
Yes.
And he destroys you mentally. So which means your emotions are so low. Everything, as I mentioned Sunday, about what weighs you down.
Yeah.
So he just do the introduction. You do the rest.
Yeah.
So when you weary, you will fight yourself with your family. When you weary, you'll fight a job. When you weary, you will not look after yourself, your health, and your mental state.
Yes.
Because it's a place to be, a place of pity, self-pity, but it's to sideline you.
In a spiritual context, that isolation part is so important because let's be statistical. The devil will send 1,001 demons. Because one puts 1,000 to flight. You know what I'm saying? You send 1,001. Just the 1,001. He's got you. Where 2 puts 10,000 to flight. There's a mathematics in the kingdom that doesn't, it boggles our natural mind. So just with 2 people, that's why isolation is such a key strategy of the enemy. It's to get you alone. And like you say, Doc, he beat you up when you were alone because you got no backup. And the devil is too much for you alone. You need the people of God. You need the presence of God. You need that influence in your life so that you can stand against the wiles of the enemy.
I was watching a TED talk in the week about a police officer that patrols the Golden Gate Bridge. And so the Golden Gate Bridge is statistically, I think, number 5 in the world for suicides where people jump off the bridge, right? So he was speaking about how he speaks people off the ledge, right? Thanks. He was speaking about how he speaks people off the ledge. So he shared a testimony. So he said he went to the ledge in the middle. He got a call. There's a guy standing on the bridge between the 2 towers and the spot. So he drove there. He got there. And he tried speaking to the guy and he said, "Hey, my brother, please don't do this. Please come over." And boom, the guy jumped and he jumped to his death. He said he'll never forget that call. But he said there was another call he got where he walked onto the bridge, and there was a guy named Mike. He actually showed the picture of Mike, and Mike is now become a public speaker and a motivational speaker. And he said, as he stood there, he said to Mike, "Hey, my brother, look, I'm not here to tell you anything. I'm here to listen to you. And what's wrong?" And he said Mike started speaking to him. He said he stood there for more than an hour. And Mike was just telling him what's wrong, why he feels so dark and depressed, and why he feels like he wants to end his life. And then he said, "Okay, Mike, I want you to do one more thing for me. Just come back over onto the side and let's talk more." He said then Mike put his foot over. And once he put his foot over, he grabbed Mike and he had him on the side. And he asked him, "What made you climb back over on the side?" He said, "Because I had somebody in my life, even though it was a stranger, that sat here for an hour and listened to my story. And that caused me to climb back over." What does that mean? That means when you're in a state of isolation, what do you need? You don't need the internet, you don't need the TV, you don't need to watch a motivation. You need somebody
to speak to you,
to sit there and listen to you.
You know what? And look, we're talking about real things here, right? All these points that we've highlighted this morning is points that we see on a weekly basis. There are some people that we like Doc said, we target certain people because we haven't seen them in a long time. Last week, I made 3 phone calls to specific people, and it was a physical phone call. So the physical phone call, they don't have the opportunity to ignore my 3 questions.
Like a text message,
Yeah, like a text message. So when I ask that question, am I going to see you Sunday in church, right? There's hesitation, but the fact that they say yes, it's a commitment. Now, what I've realized, on Sunday morning, I literally danced around somebody, celebrated them when they walked into church, based upon a phone call that I made the previous. Do you know how that person lit up? Right? Because at least
Somebody noticed me.
Apart from being in the presence of God, apart from experiencing all that, the fact that somebody celebrated them, because I haven't seen that person in 19 months.
We are busy here in the studio here today about how hard it is to reopen churches. So many churches just opened up just recently. And with this lockdown, it is really a severe lockdown. I must just admit, the harm and the severity of the people are so severe. If it's suicide, if it's marriages, if it's simple things like relationships, and I can go down the line. People lost their jobs. This was from the pit of hell. Nobody can tell me anything else. And because of that, you are burned out. So we want to discuss quickly 12 keys to get out of burnout. The first one is you should tell someone. Yeah. So when you feel burnout, I must just admit, it's hard to admit first that you are burned out, because most people that's burned out doesn't know that they are burned out. But there's kind of pointers that will show you. And when I'm done here, I'll show you 11 signs how you need to move and try to get out of burnout. So now the 12 keys, the first one, you should tell somebody. And that's important. It's exactly the point. That's why we have at our church a responsibility. How many calls did we made over a last month or so in the ministry?
Over 700
Over
calls.
7?
Between 3 people in a course of 2 months, over 700 calls.
700 calls?
Yeah.
Why did we phone the people up?
The important thing, because
and this is
they
it.
need to speak to someone.
You can only bring 50 people in the church.
Yeah.
But we phoned 700 people up. And we're still phoning.
Yes.
Pastor Roden, did you ask them for their tithe?
No.
But I'm saying that sarcastically, because that's you just want the people because of the money.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
we are genuinely concerned about
We're
people.
concerned.
I don't want to get you guys off track here. Let's get back to the 12 keys to getting back from burnout. The first one is you should tell someone.
Yes.
So when you feel burnout, it doesn't matter if it's because of business, if it's because of your personal life, is it because of your marriage, if it's because of your children. When you feel burned out, you should tell somebody. Secondly, you should get help. And I must just say that's where the church really plays a vital role. Because what do you pay these days for a counselor?
For a session, I think,
From 650
Yeah.
for an hour,
all the way
upwards.
to 2,000, 3,000.
Yeah.
So I had an interesting conversation with somebody that doesn't live in Joburg, and they were having a challenge with their marriage. And we were talking, and he got deep with me, and he told me, "Hey, my brother, I'm struggling. I don't know if we're gonna make it through this one. Then I said, oh, so you need to go and speak to someone, go and see a counselor, go and do something about it. He's like, hey, this one session cost me 1,500 the other day. And so, and again, I thought, as if this guy was living in Joburg, he could have literally come to church and speak to a professional marriage counselor, and we could have walked the journey with him for a year or two, and the potential of saving that marriage is increased by just that much.
Yeah. Let me just get the first one, tell someone. The second one is get help. The third one, lean into your friends. So again, don't be alone.
Yeah.
Don't go in a pity party. Don't be in isolation. So lean into your friends. The fifth one, the fourth one.
Keep leaning into God.
Yeah, keep leaning into God. Again,
It's church.
it's church again. So you should. I know it's okay, but you need people around you.
Yeah. The doc, we were talking about the phone calls. One aspect, when we do find people going through a difficult time, our encouragement, even though we were restricted to 50 people, in those phone calls, we tell them, if you're going through something, come to church.
Amen. So which point are we on now? First one, tell someone. Second one, get help. The third one, lean into your friends. The fourth one, keep leaning into God. The fifth one, rest. Because maybe you just need that. You fatigue, you overwork. Remember now we're talking about being burnt out. You should rest. Then the sixth one is find someone else to take your attention away from your pain, or is something, not someone else. Find something to take your attention away from your pain. It doesn't matter what it is.
Thank God for golf.
Thank God for golf. I don't know what other people are doing, but golf, cooking and baking is probably a good one. Writing something, or writing books, or
Taking a walk or jog
taking
or
a walk,
something.
or something, or go see to your dog or something like that. But you should do something away from the norm.
Cut your grass.
Yeah. Number 7, do what you can. So there's a level of expectation and also a level of perfection that's with us, that we want to do more. And the demand is great. If it's parents from the kids, if it's kids from school and homework, but you can just do what you can. And sometimes you develop guilt. That's number 7, do what you can. Number 8, don't do anything drastic or stupid. Because it forces you to get into to drastic measures, to do certain things that is completely away from God and His grace and His
Can
kingdom.
I say something quickly on that one?
You're
There's
welcome.
a saying that goes, don't make a permanent decision on a temporary situation. So because you're feeling that way, and
Right
because that's what you're going through now you make a permanent decision. Because you're frustrated, you leave your wife, or you go and smash the car. You make a decision
In a storm.
in the middle of a frustration, and then later on, you realize, see, that was now an unnecessary thing that I did. Now I could have just waited to relax, to rest first, and I would have made a better decision after.
What point was that?
That was there by
Number 8.
don't do anything drastic.
Don't do anything drastic or stupid. If you can bring one of the cameras on that screen, it will most probably be great, and then people can just follow through with us. Then also we say number 9, trust again. So for some reason you there was distrust in some area or the other, because we're talking about being burnt out. So you should trust again, and sometimes there's an attack on your faith.
Yeah.
There's an attack on something happened, like a family member passed, and people ask the question, so where's God? And you completely burn out, or the loss of a job, and you say, where's God? You should
self-pity.
You should trust again.
Get out.
So number 10, closely monitor margins. So just on that point, I don't know if you know what that point exactly means, but closely monitor margins. It's so important. Some people, when they're in a situation, they don't know where the borderline is. The margin, they don't know how to place margins in place. Because when you burn out, you have a tendency either to squeeze the borderlines, and that's where you fall into self-pity, or you broaden the borderlines. That's when you get out of character completely, and there's no margin within that. So number
10.
11.
For the warning signs.
Right.
Watch for
Number
the
10
warning
was closely monitor the margins. Number 11, watch for the warning signs. So what could warning signs be?
warning signs could be you getting agitated. So now you
Arrogant.
you're getting agitated. So you're becoming feisty. You want to fight around every corner.
You react out of character.
You react out of character. Yeah, those could be red.
And
red
that's
flags.
where the margins comes in, because that will stop you from going to the triggers, the stuff that triggers you.
And the final one is take full responsibility for the health of your soul. Again, you should put a thermostat, or most probably have a thermometer, but something that will measure your spiritual life to see exactly where you are. And the truth is, there's just a handful that will admit that they're spiritually low, because we have the tendency of justifying it. We're talking about how hard it is for churches to reopen, and we just showed you 12 getting back keys from being burnt out. Tell someone, get help, lean into your friends, keep learning into God. Go on, Pastor Roland. Rest.
Find
Number
something
6.
else to take your attention away from your pain.
Number 7.
Do what you can.
Number 8.
Don't do anything drastic or stupid.
Number 9.
Trust again.
Number 10.
Closely monitor margin.
Number 11.
Watch for the warning signs.
Number 12.
Take full responsibility of the health of your soul.
So let's look before we close the soul, before we close
The
the
soul.
the show. 11 signs you more than just tired, you are completely burnt out. So what we really want to show you here is, if you see these signs, then you should get back to church. You should get back into the presence of God when you see these signs. So just read the first one for me.
Yeah,
there.
so your passion fades.
Yeah. So when you see that sign, when you don't have passion for leadership anymore,
For anything, you just don't
Or
feel
passion
like,
for volunteers.
or passion for what you left before COVID, like in a functional role within the kingdom of God.
you don't see it.
Passion for prayer, passion for reading God's word. You just lost passion. Most probably passion for life, for that matter.
Yeah.
You've lost passion. The second one is
Your main emotion is numbness.
Yes, numbness,
Just
yeah.
don't worry. Yeah.
you no longer feel the high and the lows. Your emotion is
Everything
like
is just
it's like whatever.
Whatever
you know
happens,
the whatever.
Yeah.
You just
Say
whatever.
Sarah.
Yeah, you
Whatever
just
will be, will be.
you just go with the flow. You don't talk. You just sit there. That is signs of being burnt out. And we the text call it weariness, being weary. And the modern word is stress.
Yes. Anxiety.
It's stress and anxiety. What's the third
so
point?
little things make you disproportionately angry.
Yeah.
You get upset for nonsense.
For nonsense, yeah.
Yeah.
Like you somehow agitated with anything. It's someone chewing too loud. You want to start a fight. It's like, bruh, relax.
You're oversensitive.
Somebody takes too long at the till.
Yeah.
For that matter.
You get agitated.
Agitated. You can't find a remote control, and then you break the TV, for that matter, because of the remote. Yeah.
People become scared to just speak to you
Yeah.
because they know you're going to blow up.
And you start pushing people away also, because now people are like, I don't even go into the room because it's just going to turn into a fight. I don't want to bring that topic up. It's going to turn into an argument.
Yeah. So what was that point?
That was number 3. Little things
Make you
disproportionately angry.
angry. Like traffic, for instance. Somebody just cut in front of you and you lose your mind. It's like, that's signs of being burnt out.
And then, 4,
number 4.
everybody drains you.
Everybody drains you. It's like, is it true? People are really not draining you.
No.
But you feel like
Yeah.
that the demand is too heavy.
Yes.
And you feel drained because
Just
re-
interaction.
again, when you're at that point, you're like, everybody wants too much of you. But that's forms of being burned out.
Hey, number 5 is an important one.
Yeah.
You're becoming cynical.
Okay.
So cynical most now means you're looking for a fault in everything. You're becoming like, why did he greet me so nicely? Why is he not greeting you? Why? It's like,
You see
nah, bro, you
something
see.
after every bush.
You looking for the reasons
You're questioning
behind
the
everything.
motives of
Yeah.
everybody and
Yeah.
everything, why people say certain things
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah,
Become cynical,
Yeah,
yeah.
that becomes
Yeah,
cynical.
and
Okay, 6.
that is really a fact. That cynical one is
Cynical.
it's so true. Nothing can just be normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like some people get very cynical, sometimes too deep and spiritual, and cynical about spirituality. It's like they see stars and numbers and the 5 stones of
And every
David.
dream
and
means something. And it's like,
everything
Just
means
sleep, man.
something. Clayton is behind the camera there. He just sneezes and that means something. Why did you sneeze when I said
make
that?
3 sneezes.
You
It
make
means there's a spiritual sneeze.
How cynical can you be?
Yeah.
That's true. Yo.
But you know, people that's burn out are very cynical. Very, very cynical. What's the next one?
Nothing satisfies you.
Mm-hmm.
You just again, they're all like you become agitated for everything. Everything just frustrates you, annoys you. People annoy you. You're not satisfied with anything. The food is too hot, it burn your tongue. It's too cold, come put it more in the microwave. It's like, what do you want?
Yeah, nothing really will satisfy you. But we are busy showing for people why people are not coming back to church.
Yes.
They don't know that they are burned
Burnt
out.
out.
They don't know they are frustrated. They don't know where they are. So what we try to do to showing you the solutions of when you burn out, we try that firstly. Most probably before we close the show, which is already up, time already up, we most probably will just give you that points again. But what's the next point on signs that
Yeah,
you
can't
had
think-
burnt out?
You can't think straight. So it's again like you mentioned the other day. You read a document, someone asks you what you read, you don't even realize what you read because you weren't
mind isn't
watching.
there.
You
Not focused.
you skipping a stop sign. You're not seeing the guy next to you. You're changing lanes without looking. You're not there. You're not.
I think the number one not thinking straight is when you're in a conversation and you hardly hear or you're hardly in the conversation. And when somebody asks you a question back within that conversation, that you don't even
that
realize.
You're not mentally present.
The next one.
Your productivity is dropping. That's true.
Yeah, now within productivity, they call it the 3 zones. You find a green zone, you find a yellow zone, and you find a red zone. So your green zone, I am very productive from 6 in the morning up to 11, 12 o'clock. That's my green zone. Then you find a red zone. Let me first go to the red zone. The red zone is when you're completely unproductive. You're sleepy, tired, the brain don't function anymore. And then the yellow zone is anything in between. You're fairly in the green zone, but lingering to the red zone. So on that point, a lot of people are in different zones within their life. You can take that to your personal life, you can take it to job situations, but also to a mental and the emotional state. You could be in a green zone right now, very productive, or you could be in a red zone right now, or in a yellow zone where you're really not productive. So out of 8 hours, you most probably are just productive for 2 or 1 hour.
The part of the reason I was just reading, I finished a book not so long ago that spoke about exactly that time zone of when your productivity is at its peak. And it is in the morning, around those times. And in fact, it is actually scientifically proven that you get more done if you wake up and do everything you needed to do for the day in that hour. And then close your computer and go home. You get more done in that than sitting like pretending that you're working when your boss walks past and you act busy. And you're actually not really doing anything. So your productivity is actually the highest.
I hope not an hour. They say it's proven. My research showed 3 to 5 hours as productive. 3 to 5. And then out of 3 started linger to the yellow.
Playing late into the yellows.
And then also the red. What's the next point?
You're self-medicating. That's true. You all of a sudden eating. You summer taking. Not even self-medicating. You're taking sleeping tablets because you're not falling asleep in the night because you're thinking about your issues and your stress and your anxieties and
headaches and
you're not understanding why you feel the way you feel and you just want the pain to go away and you end up just taking painkillers or some medication or Panados every night before you sleep. And then you can become addicted to it. And it becomes an issue. You self-medicate.
So when things are good, you're still on it and you're still addicted.
But one thing that's not on you, but your body will tell you when you are burnt out because there will be certain signs in your body, pains, aches, stuff that has never been there.
Not age, right?
No, not age.
No, and you just know, and you know for a fact,
You know
I'm
for a
tired
fact.
now, bro. I need to rest. I need to take a week and just
And you know,
breathe.
when you're tired, don't try to get into conversations and stuff like that. Because you know what, you're not going to add any value and you're going to be so upset in many ways. And you're going to differ for unnecessary
You're
stuff.
going to do those other things that you
Yes.
mentioned now.
What's the
find
next one?
fault and things. You don't laugh anymore. So, Pastor Roden, you're not tired.
You're not burnt out.
No, you laugh always.
Yeah. So, laughter is really good medicine to the bone. The text is saying in the book of Proverbs, right?
Makes you feel better.
Yeah,
Yes,
when
it
you
does.
laugh, and it's true. Let us be honest. When you burn out, you don't laugh
don't
anymore,
even laugh.
or you laugh less. It's like somehow, eh?
You become cynical. Why are you laughing?
You're laughing
Are you
at
laughing
me,
at
eh?
me?
You're laughing at me. Did I say something funny? Now
Yeah.
you start the argument. That last one is also critical.
Yeah.
Where people say that you sleep and you take time off, but you wake up tired.
Yeah.
I think that's the phrase that they say. You wake up tired.
Well, it saddens me to say that we had a wonderful session here this morning. I must just say, we just tried to scratch the surface here this morning around why people are not coming back to church, why churches struggle to reopen, what's the debate around it, and we, from our side, just tried to show you that it could be one or the 100 reasons that we've mentioned since we opened the show here this morning. From me to you, a thank you, big thank you to everybody that was on the set here this morning. I'm speaking about Pastor Lester Constance in the absence of Pastor Neil Hudsenberg, Pastor Bora and Pastor Xavier Hendricks here with me here this morning in the show. From me to you, thank you so much for tuning in again. I love you. Mwah. God loves you best, and you have a super Tuesday. Take care.
Good morning, everybody. It is so good to have you here with me. Imagine if you have your vision as the car with the right team. Imagine how quick that vision will come into the picture. Something that was taking 5 years takes 3 months.
This morning is all about the leadership and influence.